There is no magic formula. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Learn Portuguese. My name is Pedro, and it's a pleasure to be here for the first time. This is the first video for the channel. And for this video, I decided to do something not only focused on learning Portuguese itself, but focus on learning a foreign language. So, if you learned another language, which is not your native tongue, of course, you've probably gone through some programs, and sometimes you feel like the progress is faster, sometimes it feels slower, but there are some things that definitely will set you back, and there are some things that will push you forward. So in this video, we're going to be discussing 5 things that are going to hinder your progress. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first bad habit is memorizing. Now, memorizing is a good thing, yes, especially for vocabulary, for words that you see for the first time. It's important to write on a piece of paper and remember. So that is, in a way, memorizing. Yeah. However, memorizing is not everything. Some people, and I've realized with some of my students, that they feel like learning means memorizing, and that's not entirely right. Memorizing is part of the process, but there also is other stuff. So people try to memorize, for example, the verbs, tenses, names. Of course, I mean, if you know what the future tense or the future simple, the future, I don't know, perfect, continuous is, great, good for you. However, that is not learning, because it's better to know how to use the tense rather than knowing only the name. You know what I mean? So memorizing the name is great and everything is good. If you're teaching or if you research, you have to know it, of course. But as a student, as someone who is learning the language, it's not crucial to know the names, to know the tenses, for example. It's better to know how to use them than to know the name. So just an example to illustrate what I mean. Let's take, for example, the present continuous tense in English, which is, if you memorize the structure, will be am is are plus a verb with the suffix ing at the end. Yes, that's how you see it on the first time. If you have a worksheet, you probably see that structure there. But it's better to know how to use it than to just memorize the structure. So, and how do you get that? That's a question I get asked all the time. How do I learn without memorizing? And the solution, the answer is by practicing, by doing exercises, by, I don't know, listening and watching stuff, which helps, of course, in all aspects of the language. But if you see people using the same structure over and over, you memorize, or rather, you learn the structure without memorizing the formula. The second bad habit of our list is translating. I know it's an instinct to see a sentence in another language and automatically translate it into your own language, into your mother tongue. It is a normal thing. And it may help understanding if you're reading a book, for example, or if you're watching a movie with subtitles on. Okay, that's fine. If your objective is only understanding that piece of context, that's fine, that's great. But if you're trying to learn the language, it's not going to help you in the long run, because translating will create this addiction in your brain to translate everything. And that is a problem, because it's connected to another of our bad habits that we're going to be talking later. One of the problems, for example, with translating everything is the wording. For example, in Portuguese, we have a word that has different meaning. Think about the word, for example, the word manga in Portuguese. So, okay, that can be a mango, or it can be a sleeve in a t-shirt, for example. So if you translate word by word, you may get these problems that may be mistranslated. And yes, translating helps, but it's not going to solve your life. Also, if you get used to translating everything, you will create this delay in your brain. So, Every time someone tries to talk to you, let's say someone speaks to you in Portuguese and you're an English speaker, so the sentence comes in Portuguese to your brain that then will translate it to English, and you think of an answer in English to then translate to Portuguese. So imagine this in a conversation. There will be a delay in there. I don't know, a 2-3 second delay in a conversation is pretty awkward for you to just be looking at the person and staring at them for 2 or 3 seconds without knowing what to say. So if I'm not supposed to translate, if I'm not supposed to think in the first language, I'm supposed to train my brain to understand and to think in that language. For instance, when I speak Portuguese, my brain thinks in Portuguese. And when I switch to English, so does my brain. And how do I get there? How do I achieve it? By, again, practicing. But you have to get focused on it. You have to understand and you have to train yourself to think in the second language. Our third bad habit, which is connected to the second one, is comparing languages. I mean, some languages, well, let's say English and Portuguese, they translate very well. The wording is very much the same. However, if you come from a different background, for instance, I live in Turkey. I teach Turkish students. And in Turkey, the Turkish language is completely different. It has a completely different wording order than English or Portuguese. So for them is a little bit harder maybe to learn a language, but it gets even harder when they try to translate word by word because it will not make sense. So again, this is one of those mistakes that people make, but perhaps instinctively again. It comes naturally to you to just translate and compare languages, of course, because that what you have been taught since you were a kid. So it is this habit is actually one of the most difficult to get rid of, but you have to, and again, the solution is the same. You have to train your brain to get used to that and to get used to not translating and not comparing the languages. That habit number 4, not speaking. It may seem trivial to speak when you learn a language, but believe me or not, most people do not do that. So, of course, you can learn by reading, you can buy a textbook and you can study, you can understand the grammar, you can learn the grammar, and you will be able to write, you'll be able to read, you'll be able to listen even, but you will not be able to speak, which in my opinion is the most important skill that you need to have. And the only way to learn how to speak or to practice speaking is actually speaking. I mean, nowadays we have the internet, so it should be pretty easy to find other people who are trying to learn the same language as you. For instance, there are communities online that you can use to find those people and you can get in touch with them. You can talk to them on Skype, for example. You can talk to them on online calls and just to practice, or you can find someone next to you, because I'm pretty sure there may be someone next to you in your city, in your country maybe, that is trying to learn the same language and you can get in touch with them. And last but not least, our bad habit number 5, that is being a perfectionist. Trust me, learning a language is just like learning any other skill. I can't imagine myself picking up, let's say, oil painting and just being a professional painter in 2 weeks. That is impossible. There are people who have been doing this for years and years, and they just get better and better. And how do you learn any skills? By making mistakes. First, you make a mistake, then you learn how to do it correctly, and from that point onwards, you will do it correctly. It's the same thing with learning a language. You will make mistakes. It's normal. It's okay. If you go on the streets trying to talk to people, they will not laugh at you because you're speaking incorrectly, because you're making mistakes. No, they're going to help you. It's the opposite. Then you can even learn from those people talking on the streets. Let's say you go to Brazil, try to speak Portuguese with someone, they will try to teach you some Portuguese. They will help you so you don't have the same problem again. And then you will learn, let's say, bits and pieces of languages in that way. So don't try to be a perfectionist. Making mistakes, it's okay. Because if you try and try and try and there's always a mistake, which is normal, but in your mind, you see this, you see making mistakes is something wrong, it will discourage you and you will just little by little get farther from that language, get farther from, let's say, the flame of learning something new, the excitement of learning something new. So keep that in mind, making mistakes is fine. Alright guys, that was our first video, 5 bad habits, and on the next video I'm going to be talking about 5 good habits. So if you like the video, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, it's your first time, make sure to leave a comment, leave some feedback, and feedback would be very much appreciated. So that's it, see you next time, and have a good day.